Okay, so today we will be going further from this particular step which we had done last time. So in this particular slide, what we did was we eliminated the gamma tilde which was available here. So we eliminated this. So once we eliminated this, we got something like this, and now we will see how we can move further from here. So if you see, oh, this one also was done. So what we did was we did this substitution of the variables, where I told you just a second, that we can replace this by this and this by this. So once we did that, we got to this particular objective function which is given over here. Now, what we will do is we will try to make this objective function, or you can a convex optimization problem. Basically, we want to make this convex optimization problem similar to what is available in the books. So let us see how we can do that. So if I repeat this particular objective function which is given over here again, then this is the one in the clean format, because the earlier one was more, there was more of a writing over there. So this is the one which we, finally arrived at. So now, if we want to make it to the one which is which is nowadays which is normally available in the books, so what you will do is you will transform this objective function in this way, which is given over here. So what you will do is because it's in numerator, it's in denominator. The 1 by theta 2 is in the denominator. So what we will do is, if we make it to come into the numerator, then the thing will become minimization. Earlier we were maximizing this. So when you are maximizing 1 by x, that means you are minimizing x. So both of them are same. Maximization of 1 by something is equivalent to minimization of that something. So if you do that, so now the second step that we had done is, we are doing is, we are squaring the L2 norm. So we are squaring it and dividing by half. So if I do this operation, that is multiplication by half and squaring, it will also not disturb the solution of this convex optimization problem. See, you will have some solution for this, and the solution of this convex optimization problem will be some optimal theta and theta naught. You will get some optimal value of this particular problem which you have here. So if you solve this particular problem which is given here, where I will divide it by half and squaring it, then also whatever we will get here is the same optimal solution for this will also be there, which is same as this solution which you get for this particular objective function. So these scalings and squaring will not affect the solution. So till this slide, anybody is having any doubts, then he can ask me. Otherwise, we will move forward today for the next part of this, SVM. Okay. So if there are no doubts, then what we are doing is, now I am rewriting it again here. This particular objective function, this particular convex objective function, and this is the one which you will normally see in most of the books. What you will see is they will start from here. They will not show you how you arrive at this convex optimization problem. So this is the one. So now one thing to observe here is that it's a quadratic minimization problem with linear constraints. So what it means is, you have this squaring of the theta. This theta is the theta is the variable that you have to optimize. So as you can see, it's a square, so it's a quadratic form of minimization. And the constraints that you have here, you have some constraints to abide by, so that to get to the solution of this theta, these constraints are linear. Linear in theta. As you can see, it's clearly visible. So it's a linear constraint quadratic minimization problem. And one thing to note is, it is convex. This particular problem is a convex problem. So if it is a convex problem, that means you will have a global minima here, and that solution will be unique. And solution to this problem, one important thing is, whatever solution that you will get in order to solve this particular convex optimization problem, or what you can say is this particular uh, problem. Yeah, this problem is basically, the solution to this will also be called as support vector machine. Note that the solution that you will get for solving this convex optimization problem is called as support vector machine. And in specifically in support vector machine, we have two categories. One is hard SVM, another one is soft SVM. So right now, this particular category which we are discussing is called as hard SVM. These terms may not, these terms may be, you must be, we have seen something like this in our classification problems also, where we had a hard case like maximization of something, and then we were softening it using softmax version of it. So similarly, here also you have something on similar grounds. Here we have a hard SVM and a soft SVM. We will discuss that as we go further. So this particular convex optimization problem is hard SVM problem. Any questions here? Okay. So again, you can write it in this format. This particular convex optimization problem that I am writing it over here, you can write it in this format also, where you have, like this. You can write it in this format, where you have u is a vector and q is the matrix. In the matrix vector format, you can write it in this way. And once you write it in this way, what you can do is you can use any quadratic programming solver that are available on in Python. You can use them, and you can use these as an argument to solve using these quadratic programming algorithms, and whatever value that you will get will be the solution. So this is basically a very typical standard format in which you have something, some problem is there, some convex optimization problem is there, and you make use of existing libraries that you are having in Python or MATLAB, and you make use of them to solve for the thetas and the theta zeros. So the important thing is how to make these problems which are available here in the format in which your soft solver will actually take it as an input. So if your solver which is available in MATLAB or Python takes as an input which is Q, P, A, and C, so what you have to do is you have to change your problem in this format, so that you can directly substitute these values here, so that whatever value you will get after solving this quadratic problem solver, you will get as an answer which is u star, and this answer is the support vector machine answer. Okay, so this is the high level overview of how you will do it, but let's solve this problem which is given over here and see what kind of intuitions we can get when we solve this type of problem. So the one of the thing is, like, I am just repeating this objective function here again. So one thing to note here is the immediate question that I was asking, how to solve this particular type of problem. We arrived at this objective, we arrived at this convex convex function or optimization problem, and the thing is how to solve this optimization problem. So one of the ways of solving this optimization problem is using Lagrangian functions. So this is the way we use, this is one of the ways of solving this particular uh, convex optimization problem. So let us see how we can do that. So Lagrangian function is nothing, I will explain you the details of it. Okay, let me explain that first. So here you have, I am just repeating something, like, it's a typical optimization problem that you will observe in most of the books. So what is that? This is called as inequality constraint optimization problem. So what is this inequality constraint optimization problem? It is something like this, which is given over here. So what you will find in most of the problems will be, you are minimizing some objective function which is fx here, and you are minimizing over, you minimizing for the variable x, like you want to know which x will minimize this objective function, and you are subjecting this particular minimization objective to these constraints. So these constraints says that you have, some g of x, some function of x which is always greater than 0, and some hi of x which is equal to 0. So based on these inequality and equality constraints, you are actually, constraining your objective function which is given over here so that once you get the value, you are constraining the objective function, and the value of x that gets to the minimum of this constraint objective function will be the value of your x star. That is the optimal value that you will obtain from solving this particular type of problem. And here, this particular f gi's, the ones which are here, the functions gi's are differentiable and convex, and the functions hi which are given over here are affine functions. They are affine functions which are of the format this. So normally your hx will be something like this. So yeah,
Sir, what is fine?
affine functions are nothing but they are just a straight line like this. You will have a constraints which are lying on the straight line, and these affine functions can be a straight line and or maybe the shifted version of these straight lines. So if you observe this line, this hx carefully, it's a straight line. You have a transpose x plus b, it's a straight line, and it's a linear function in x. So you can say it's a yx plus something like this.
Okay.
It's a something like a straight line type of thing. Okay, so so the thing is, what we have is, if you see pictorially, all GIX are something like this. You will have G1X, then you will have G2X, then you have G3X. So all these are actually forming a boundary for you, like this, and this may be your H1X. So all these are actually forming the boundary for this particular objective function fx to reside. So fx has to reside within this boundary, and you want to find minimum value of this x within this boundary actually. If you go outside, because fx can be outside also, so that solution is not feasible. So the only solution that is feasible is the one which is inside this boundary, which is actually formed by gi's and hx. So that is what is actually seen here. So in order to find the minimum value of fx and the value of that x, we have to go with a standard procedure, and that procedure is called as Lagrangian function.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, when we say that we need to find minimum of the objective function or maximum of the objective function, does that mean that the minimum function gives us the smallest area of the bounded surface, or
It's not a smallest area, it's a smallest point, the minimum point of that particular function. because
okay?
because if you see here, we are actually restricting ourselves to the convex functions and differentiable functions. So once you find a once you find a minimum of that is the global minima of that solution, or the global maxima. You can do the maximum of this also, but right now we are concerned with the minimum. So whenever you are solving this, you will get the optimal minima. Okay,
Okay.
so in order
Uh,
to, yes,
our optimal, whether minimum or maximum, will always lie on GIX, right?
it will be constrained with, it's not lying on GIX, it's constrained within the boundaries of GIX and HX.
Yes, sir, that I
Yeah.
understood. But most of the times, while doing optimization problems, our
Uh,
optimal solution is on boundaries only. So
yeah.
will that just be followed here also?
See, the thing is, first of all, if there is a single constraint like this, if you have g1x like this, and if you have the objective function which looks like this, then what you are saying is true, because that point will lie here and it will be on the boundary of gix. But suppose if all of them are satisfied, if you want to satisfy g1x also, and then g2x also, g3x also, and h1x also simultaneously, then it can be the case, yeah, it can be here also, because that is also within the boundary. But most probably it will give you a result which lies within this constraint space. You understand?
Yes, sir, yes. Okay. It will balance out all the GIX and
Yes, yes,
HX.
yes.
Okay.
So So in order to find the minima of minima of this function fx, and the value that you will get is x optimal here, the standard way of doing it is using the Lagrangian function, and what that says is you write fx here, then you write minus the summation I running from 1 to m. So I running from 1 to m is basically this thing. So you are actually summing all the i's running from 1 to m alpha I gix, and then minus j running from 1 to k beta j hjx. So rather it's not k here, it's p, because this is p here. So we are taking p such equations. So that's why it is p here. So what you are doing is you are actually multiplying it by beta and alpha, and you are weighting the constraints by alpha and beta and subtracting it from the function fx. So this particular function that we get is basically called as the Lagrangian function, and here you can see that these alpha i's and beta i's are actually, the dimension of that is Rm and Rk. These are the vectors which are Rm and Rk. Rather, it's not Rk here, it will be Rp. And they are called as, these alpha i's and beta i's are called as Lagrange multiplier. They are called as Lagrange multipliers, or they are called as dual variables. So either of that will be there. One is, they are called as Lagrange multipliers, or they are also called as dual variables. And this is just a name, so there is nothing fancy or nothing mystery about it. These alphas and betas are also called as dual variables. This is just a fancy word, but it doesn't mean we will understand what that dual means, but it's just a name. And the reason for putting this name as dual variable is just to separate it from x. So x is normally called as primal variable. So here x is the primal variable and alpha and beta are called as the dual variables. And note that we have constraint on this alpha and beta also. And the constraint is that alpha I should always be greater than or equal to 0. That you must keep in mind, because I will come to this constraint later on. So you have to keep this in mind when you are writing a Lagrangian function. This alpha I that you are having here will always be greater than or equal to 0. This you have to keep in your mind. And another thing is, this particular beta j variable which you have here, there is no constraint on this. So there is no constraint on this beta j, but there is a constraint that alpha I has to be always greater than or equal to 0. You have to keep this in mind, and this will repeat again and again in future. So I want you to get clear here itself that these are the constraints that you have for this particular objective function. So whatever solution that you will get by solving this Lagrangian function, whatever solution that you will get will be denoted as, let us say, x star, alpha star and beta star. So these are the solutions that you will obtain when you solve this Lagrangian function. And how will you solve this Lagrangian function? It's easy, and we will see now. Any doubts here regarding this particular slide? If you have any doubts, let me know. Otherwise, this is just a theory that you can find in any of the standard optimization text. So I'm not going into details of too much, because some way or the other we have to restrict the course within the bounds of machine learning. But these are important points from the SVM point of view, because if you do not know all these points, your SVM, you cannot understand it. So I am keeping the maths at the minimal, so that you can understand SVM properly. So if you have any questions here, let me know, otherwise we will move forward. So if there are no questions, then let us see how we can write Lagrangian of this for our particular problem. So if you see here, for our case there is no HIs, because as you can see, if you see here, there is only inequality constraint, but these are called as GIs, but there is no HIs. HIs are not there. So if HIs are not there, so the beta term will go away. There is no beta, because there is no HI. The only ones that are left is alphas. So right now what I am saying is I am replacing this alpha by lambda, just a nomenclature, but the same property which is with alpha will also be with lambda also. So now if I want to write the Lagrangian function, it will be what? This is the objective function fx plus, then you have then you have minus summation, then you have alpha gx. It was like this, right? So the same thing is repeated here. So what you have is, instead of alpha you have lambda here, and then you have this one as gx. This is your gx. So note that this is actually greater than 1. So if you want to bring this side, this one, so it will be 1 minus g times, it will be less than 0. So this is what is over here. So any questions here? So this is basically nothing but you are actually writing it in the Lagrangian function format, which is given like this. So now how to obtain the solution for this? That is how to obtain theta star, theta 0 star and lambda star. How to obtain that? So you can obtain the values by doing these steps. So what are these steps? The steps are that you take the derivative. This is the derivative operator. You take the derivative with respect to theta and theta 0 of this Lagrangian function, and these theta and theta 0 are also called as primal variables, as I told you, and then you take the derivative with respect to lambda also, and what you get as the answer will be solving these two equations together. So how will you solve them? Once you solve for this particular equation, you will get some value of lambda. So once you solve this particular equation, you will get some value of lambda in terms of theta and theta 0. You will get some value of lambda in terms of theta and theta 0, and then what you can do is you can substitute this value of lambda here and then solve for theta and theta 0. So this is the way that you will solve for Lagrangian function, which is given over here, and this Lagrangian function will give you the optimal value of theta, theta 0 and lambda star.
So, sir, theta and theta 0 is primal. So, lambda should be the dual of that, right?
Yes, it's a dual one.
Okay.
So we will come to that also once we move to the slides, but keep this in mind. The way you will solve this particular thing will be in this format. You will get some solution of lambda, which is the dual variable, in terms of theta and theta 0, and then you use this dual variable back into the primal space and calculate these primal variables. So one thing to note is, as he has just pointed out, it's a good point, that this lambda is a dual variable, and the important thing is we do not get any information from this dual variable, because the important point is to get the values theta and theta 0, because these theta and theta 0s are the values which actually define the hyperplane. If you see the equation of hyperplane, these are the primal variables which are of important to us, because we want to separate the points using this hyperplane, and there is no lambda involved here. So lambdas are important to calculate and use it in this particular equation, so that we can get the values of theta and theta 0, which are the primal variables. So we have to solve for primal variables with the help of dual variables, which is lambda. So let us see now today how we can do that. So are you able to hear my voice? I just saw something like a disconnection type of thing. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, yes. Sir.
Okay. Okay, so now if it is clear to you this thing, then let's discuss further. Yeah. So as you know that I told you that if you solve these two equations, which is this one and this one, the value that you will get is theta star, theta 0 star, and you will get lambda star as the answer. This is the one which you will get. So actually the thing is, once you get this, the thing is, these solutions that you will get, please note alpha and lambda are replaceable, so keep that in mind. So The solution is a constraint optimization solution, and it has to actually satisfy some conditions. You have to satisfy some conditions, then only this will be the solution. If you want to say that this is the solution of the constraint optimization problem, then it has to satisfy following conditions which are given over here. So what are they? These conditions are basically called as KKT conditions. If you observe them, they are called as KKT conditions, which is Karush, Kahn, Tucker. It's called as KKT conditions, which are to be satisfied. Then only we can say that the solution of the Lagrangian that you are obtaining, which is this, and this, are optimal solutions. So, so what are they? So let's understand it. So if you take the derivative with respect to the primal variable x here of the Lagrangian, which is given over here, its value has to be equal to 0. So this is called as the stationarity condition, which we already did it, right? We were already doing derivative of the x or derivative of the thetas with respect to the Lagrangian. We were already doing it. So this particular type of thing which we are doing it here, which we are saying it is equal to 0, is called as the stationarity condition here, which is given over here. And what it means is that the primal variable should be stationary. That is the main concept for imposing this constraint here. What is the second condition? The second condition is called as gi x star should be greater than 0 and hj x star should be equal to 0. What it means is whatever solution that you are getting, if you put these solutions into these constraints, then they should actually satisfy the constraints, because these constraints, we know that gix is greater than equal to 0 and hjx is equal to 0 are the constraints. So if you put these solutions inside, if you put the primal solutions inside these constraints, it should satisfy the constraint. So this type of satisfaction, this type of substituting the values and getting these constraints satisfied, is also called as primal feasibility. So it what it means basically is to ensure that all the constraints are satisfied properly if you substitute the values of x star here. The third constraint that has to be followed is that your alpha I stars are to be greater than or equal to 0. This also we have discussed. If you see here, I have already discussed it here. If you see this point, that your alpha i's are to be greater than 0, so this constraint also lies for the solution also. That is, if you get this solution has to be always greater than 0. So this is actually given here. So it's there is nothing fancy about it. So it's also called as dual feasibility, and the requirement has to be that alpha I has to be greater than 0 and there is no constraint on beta I star. So this also I have just explained earlier, and this particular thing is also called as dual feasibility. And what is the fourth? Fourth one is this. This is very important. This will come again and again, so I want you to focus on this. This is called as complementary slackness condition. And what it says is that your alpha I star dot gix star is equal to 0. So in this situation, what happens is, as you know that your alpha I star is always greater than or equal to 0, and your gix star is always less than or equal to 0. So the complementary slackness condition says that if you multiply these two together, let us say, if you multiply these two together, then what it says is the value should be 0. So how it is possible? It is possible that if gix star is less than 0, then if you want to make the complete multiplication equal to 0, then how will you make it? Can anybody tell me? Any one of you? You know that,
Sir, can you repeat?
sorry?
Can you please repeat?
So the thing is, this is one constraint that you have. You already know that alpha I stars has to be always greater than 0. Another constraint is that your gix star is always less than or equal to 0. So if you multiply the two, and we know that through complementary slackness condition, if you multiply the two together, your value will be equal to 0, that is for sure. Then if your GIX is less than or equal to 0, then what can you say about alpha I? Will it be 0 or will it be greater than 0?
It will be 0.
Yes, so obviously it is, it's quite evident, because you want this complete expression to be equal to 0. Then if your GIX is less than equal to 0, then your alpha I has to be equal to 0. And in the other way around, let us say if your alpha I is greater than or equal to 0, then what can you say about GIX?
It
Your
should be 0.
GIX will be equal to 0. So this is very important. Either because the multiplication is 0, so if any one of them is not equal to 0, the other one will be equal to 0. So this is called as complementary slackness condition, and this plays a central role in support vector machines, as we will see in the coming slides. So any questions here regarding this? Any questions? Okay, so this is basically the thing. So now let's rewrite our Lagrangian function again. So if you see, this is the Lagrangian function that we wrote earlier. So I'm just repeating it here. So now one thing to note is, this is your alphas, and it is replaced by lambda now in this particular, in our case, but this is alpha, and this is your gx. So as I discussed just now, this particular thing, the complementary slackness condition, I discussed with you, right, this one. So let's repeat this for this Lagrangian function. So if you repeat this, then you will get something like this. These are the conditions that you will get for complementary conditions. What is this? That if your lambda is greater than equal to 0, then this particular thing is equal to 0. What is this? This is basically gx. This will be equal to 0. And if your lambda is equal to 0, then this can be less than 0. So its g of x is less than 0. So why it is possible? Because your lambda times this 1 minus yj theta transpose xj, everything is less than 0. Oh, sorry, equal to 0 from the complementary condition. It has to be equal to 0. So that's why if lambda is greater than 0, this will be 0, and if lambda is equal to 0, this will be less than 0. And again I am telling you, this is not, this is one of the important steps in understanding the support vector machines, and it will come later on. So keep this in mind. This is a complementary condition. So now once we have this, and this is the Lagrangian we have here, right? So we want to solve this Lagrangian. We want to solve this Lagrangian, and how we wanted to solve this? We wanted to solve this Lagrangian by calculating the derivative here with respect to theta naught, and calculating the derivative with respect to lambda. So as I told you, once you calculate the value of derivative of with respect to lambda first, and then you will put that value here. So now let us calculate this step first, and then once we get the value of lambda from here, we will put that in this primal space to get the value of theta and theta 0. So let's do that. So now the first step is to calculate the derivative with respect to lambda. So you are calculating this, and once you get the value of lambda, we will keep this into the first equation that will give you the value of theta and theta 0. So let's do this first. So as you can see, when you take the derivative with respect to the lambda of this Lagrangian function, so one thing is observed, that this particular expression is independent of lambda. So there is no lambda here. There is no lambda here. So this term will go away. There will be no term there will be no term like this, because there is no lambda available here. So this is gone. So that's why I am keeping it as 0. And then we are keeping derivative of the lambda with respect to this expression. So now the important thing is, you want to take the derivative of this lambda with respect to this expression and you want to keep it equal to 0. So if you want to keep this equal to 0, the only way this particular function will become equal to 0 will be if it is either maximum or if it is minimum. Then only you will get the derivative equal to 0, because when you will be at the maximum of a function or a minimum of the function, then only you will get it, right? So we want to understand what kind of function is this. So if you see this function closely, we want to analyze that either we have to go to the maximum of it or to the minimum of it to get the value of 0. So we want to check that we have to go maximum or minimum, where we should go in order to find the value of lambda where the derivative is equal to 0. So we want to see that, and there will be no saddle point for this particular equation. There will be no saddle point for this because it's linear in lambda. It is a linear equation in lambda, so there will be no saddle point because it's a straight line. So we want to see whether we want to go this way to find the value of lambda, or we want to go this way to find the value of lambda. That means whether we want to go uphill to find the value of lambda here, or this side to go downhill like this. So you note here that lambdas are always greater than 0. That is because we discussed it, right? Because we discussed these are alphas. So this is always greater than zeros, and we know this particular expression is always less than 0. So one thing to note is that it is this particular function which is given over here is unbounded from minimum. Actually it is going like this, there is no bound. It's going to the minimum value at, there is no unbounded minimum means you cannot find the minimum. It will continue to go like this. It's a straight line which will continue to go like this, but it has a fixed maximum here. So if it has a fixed maximum, so what we have to do is, in order to find the lambda, we want to find this point from where it started, which is the maximum value. That will give you the optimal value of lambda here. So in order to find this particular thing, we have to find the maximum value of it. Instead of, if once you find the maximum value of it, that value will give you the optimal value of lambda. So any questions here regarding this? So you know that this particular function is going down and there is no minimum for this because it's always going down, down, down. So let's find the maximum value of this. So let lambda be the maximum value, and we can write it like this. So lambda star is the maximum value of the argmax lambda of this particular expression which we were discussing. So you are actually maximizing this particular constraint, and once you maximize it and you restrict the value of lambda greater than 0, so whatever value that you will get is the lambda star. So what it says is what value of lambda maximizes this argument. That is why we call it as argmax. That is, what value of lambda will maximize this argument is written in short form as argmax. So the value of lambda which does that is called as lambda star. So now if you recall back, as I told you, once you calculate the value of lambda star, you have to keep that value into the primal space to get the values of theta and theta 0, right? So that thing has to be done. So in order to do that, what you will do is you will plug this value, the one which you have calculated here, and put this into the Lagrangian function which is given over here. So what you are doing, you are actually plugging the value that you got for lambda star and keep that in the Lagrangian function, so that you can get the solutions for, this is not w star, this is theta and theta 0. So you will put these values that you will get for lambda star back into the original problem, the primal problem, so that you will get theta and theta 0 as the output. So if you want to do that, you can do it by this way. So you are actually substituting this particular thing here. So if you solve this particular problem here, then you will get the value of lambda star, which is basically used in calculation of the Lagrangian function, which is given over here. So if you see this particular thing carefully, you can bring this particular thing inside also and make it like look like this, 1 by 2 theta plus j equal to 1 to m lambda j and everything here, and then you take max of lambda greater than equal to 0 followed by min of theta naught. You can do like this. Why we can do this? Because this particular expression is independent of lambda, so you can bring it inside. So your max will be on the top and followed by min. So that's why you can write it like this. So this is star. So what is now important? The important thing is that minimization of the primal space, which is given over here, the minimization of the primal space which is given over here is equivalent to this expression. And what is this expression? This expression is minimum of the primal space followed by maximum of the dual variable times the Lagrangian. So you are taking minimization of the primal followed by maximization of the dual of the Lagrangian here. So this particular problem is called as minimax problem, which is quite famous problem in the computer science area. So you will find lot of problems that actually get at this point where you want to maximize first followed by minimization. So this is one of the most important problems that you will encounter in game theory. If you go to the advanced versions of of these machine learning and reinforcement learning concepts, then you will encounter that this type of problem is very common in doing it. So any questions till now? If you have any questions, let me know. Any one of you? Okay, so if there are no questions, let's move forward. So now what happens is this particular thing, the minimax problem that you are seeing over here, it's actually it's not giving us too much of intuition in understanding the support vectors in support vector machine. It's not giving us too much of intuition, and second is it's very difficult to solve min max problems. So in order to solve this particular type of min max problem, we want to convert it into dual space. We want to convert it into dual space so that we can solve this problem effectively. But it has to be noted down that this space is similar to dual space, but the only thing is that in dual space we can actually visualize our support vector machine problem more clearly. So in order to visualize support vector machine more clearly, we have to move to the dual space. So let us see what that is. So there are two reasons actually to go to the dual space. The first reason is that we can see what is actually support vectors. What is actually support vectors? We are saying always support vector machine, support vector machine. So we want to understand what is this support vector term in support vector machine. So this can only be understood if you go to the dual space. If you are not in the dual space, but if you are in the primal space which is given over here, then in this min max problem situation, then you are not able to understand that. So we have to convert it into dual space to understand this particular thing. And the second objective of going to the dual space will be discussed later. But right now our focus is on this particular point, that is why we are calling support vector machines as support vector machines itself. What is this support vector? So that is what we want to see now. So as you recall that our problem is a quadratic programming problem. So as I discussed earlier also, It's a quadratic programming problem, and in quadratic programming problems there is a strong duality condition. In strong duality condition, normally what happens is your min max operation which you have in the primal space, which we have just derived. If you see, we have just derived this, and we saw that in primal space you have to do this min max operation. So when the strong duality happens, what happens is that this min max condition can be written equally as max min condition. You can actually change these operators. Max you can bring it here, min you can bring this side. So you can do this way. So strong duality means that you can actually replace max this side, and you can actually interchange the roles of max and min like this way and this way. And if it is not a strong duality, then there will be a greater than or equal to sign like this. But since we are doing quadratic programming, and quadratic programming are basically convex optimization problems, so we can replace this greater than or equal to by equal to condition. So that means the primal solution that we had here, we can replace it by this operation, which is max min operation of the Lagrangian. So let us focus on this now, which is in the dual space. So as you recall, this is your dual space. So now I will write max followed by min of the Lagrangian, and not min followed by max. As we can see that it is equal. So now the important thing is, if you want to calculate the values of theta and theta 0 star, then you can go by this. That is max followed by min of the Lagrangian, and this is called as dual problem. And what is our objective function? If you want to, I just repeated it again. So this is our convex optimization problem which we started out with. So let us solve this now. Let us solve this particular thing and see what intuition you can get from here. Earlier we solved this thing, right? Earlier we solved this thing and we didn't get any intuition here. But now we want to solve in this way. That is, we minimize first and then we will maximize. So let us see how we can do that. So this is the convex optimization problem. This is the Lagrangian which we already discussed. So now what we will do is, in earlier case, if you remember, I took the derivative with respect to the lambda first, and then I equated it to 0, and that gave us lambda star, which we kept it in the primal solution. But now, as you can see here, this problem has minimum first, so we will take the derivative with respect to the primal variables now, and once we get the values of the primal variables, we will substitute back into the lambda. So here if you see, I am taking the derivative with respect to theta and theta 0 now. Instead of taking the derivative with respect to the lambda, I am taking derivative with respect to the theta first. And if you observe that you are taking the derivative with respect to theta and theta 0 and you are equating it equal to 0, so this is actually the stationarity condition of the KKT condition, which is the first condition. If you observe here, if I go back and show you that the KKT condition, what is that KKT condition? The KKT condition says that derivative with respect to the primal variables has to be equal to 0. So this is what we are doing here. This is the first KKT condition that we are having this side. So we are actually equating it equal to 0, both of them. So this is the second condition and this is your first condition here. So let's focus on this particular answer which you are getting from here. If you focus on this particular answer, what you are getting is something like this. I'm just repeating it here. So what it shows is, as I told you, that this theta is actually, governing the equation of the hyperplane. It is governing the equation of the hyperplane. So if you have this theta value, then you are defining the hyperplane properly to separate the two classes. So this particular value of theta is actually obtained by summing from J 1 to M, and M is the total number of samples in this training data set. So please note this M, I am always keeping it as training examples. So it is running from 1 to M, lambda j, yj, xj. This is what we got from taking the derivative. So we will we want to understand what this is actually. So it's a hyperplane written as a linear combination of the data points. It's a hyperplane which is written as a linear combination of the data points. As you can see, it's a linear combination because it can be written as lambda 1 y1 x1 plus lambda 2 y2 x2. So these are your data points actually. These are your data points, and you are actually combining it by lambdas. So that's why it's a linear combination of data points. And important point to observe now is that this lambdas, the ones which we are discussing here, are either 0 or greater than 0. As you can recall, that this is actually the alphas that we were discussing, and we were saying that let's replace alpha by lambda. So this is actually a dual variable, and which was constrained to be always greater than or equal to 0. That's what I am writing here. So these lambdas are either greater than 0 or equal to 0. And you also note that it comes from the complementary condition that we discussed. So the important thing is, now we want to understand this particular thing further. So you can note now the values of lambda will be either 0 or it will be always greater than 0. So keep this in mind. Now what we want to do, we have calculated this value of theta. Now we want to substitute it back into the lambda. As you can see here, this is what we have calculated. Now we have to substitute it back to the lambda. So that is what I am doing here. So if you see this Lagrangian function which is given over here, so what I will do is I will replace these values of I will replace the values of theta which we have obtained just now here. I will put the values of theta here and write all this expression in the format of lambda. So this is the one which this is the one which we have here. This is the original Lagrangian equation that we have, and what I am doing now, I am replacing this theta by the value of theta that we obtained just now, and this theta is replaced by the one which is shown over here in the blue format. Just the substitution only. You are replacing the values of theta by the corresponding values that you obtained just before. So this is the one which you got for this particular theta, and this is the one which you got for this particular theta. And if you do some manipulations, as you can see here, I am doing some manipulations here. So if you go through these manipulations slowly and clearly and go by yourself, then what you can see is you will get, after doing all these manipulations which are shown over here in each of these steps, and what you will get is the final answer which is given over here. This is the final answer that you will get once you substitute the values of theta here and do the manipulations. And one of the substitutions that I am doing over here is that this particular thing which is given over here is actually 0. This thing is 0, and the reason for this is 0 is it is coming from the stationarity condition which is actually here, this one. As we have already calculated it here that this particular thing is 0, so I am using this thing as 0 in evaluation, so that finally we get this as the answer. So the important thing is this Lagrangian function we got here, and now if you remember, we have to do maximum of lambda. We have to do maximum on this lambda which is given over here, because minimum of theta is already done, and we substituted that value of theta to get this expression, and we want to calculate the maximum of this. So so the so this, if you want to calculate the maximum of this, then it is equivalent to this particular dual problem. So this is the dual problem that you have to solve. This is the dual problem that you have to solve, where you have to maximize the lambda, which is given over here, subjected to this constraint. So now the important thing is, once you get the answer of this, once you get the answer of this, what will be the answer of this? Let us say the answer of this is lambda star. The answer of this is lambda star. So this lambda star is not that important to us, because we want to put this value back into the w and w0, which is evaluated in terms of lambda, so that we can get the values of theta and theta 0. Sorry, not w0, it is theta and theta 0. So this is the lambda star that you will get from this particular dual problem. So recall the complementary condition that we were discussing earlier. This is the complementary condition that we have. Now the important part is, we want to understand what is this lambda star actually. What is this lambda star? We want to understand it. So in order to understand it, we are going to the complementary condition again. And in this condition, I have told you already that if this is greater than 0, this will be equal to 0, and if this is equal to 0, this has to be less than 0. So I have explained this equation, but the interpretation of this is required. What is that interpretation? The interpretation is that if this lambda j is greater than or greater than 0, then this is equal to 0. What it means? It means that all the points lying on the boundary, because you can see, you can bring this one this side, so it's a boundary, all the points lying on the boundary will have the value lambda j greater than equal to 0, greater than 0. This is what this condition is telling. And in the second condition, what it is saying? In the second condition, it is saying that if it is equal to 0, then it means you are lying in the boundary, you are not lying on the boundary. So what it is saying is, all the points which are correctly classified, because if you write this equation, it's a correct classification equation. This equation is correctly classified points. So all the points which are correctly classified are lying in the interior of the boundary, because because that constraint is given by this. By saying this, I already told you that we are correctly classifying all the points. So this one actually is the same as this one. So whatever points which are correctly classified properly, note that values of the lambdas corresponding to that will be 0. Any questions here regarding this understanding? So I want to discuss one slide more, and then we will switch off this lecture, so that you can go back and recall what is there. So the thing is, all the points which are on the boundary will have the value of lambda greater than 0, and all the points which are lying in the interior of the boundaries will have lambda equal to 0. So what it can be seen is from this slide. So there is a lot of things going on here. Let us go one by one step, so that everything is clear here. So one of the important point is, let us, these are the, first of all, I want to show that these are the points, yellow points. These yellow points have the class -1. This is the green points, and these values, this belongs to the class equal to 1. So first point is clear. So we have two set of data points, this one and this one, having class -1 and 1 respectively. The second thing is the regions. So if you see this region here, this region actually, if you see, it satisfies this constraint. You can check back yourself also. This will satisfy this constraint, and for this region, this will satisfy this constraint. Sorry, not including these points. Not including these points. only these points will satisfy this region, and this particular thing will satisfy this constraint. And this main line which is given over here is actually, this particular equation of the hyperplane, which is, that is what we want to actually find out. And these dotted lines which are given over here are the margins of this hyperplane. These are the margins. So these margin equations are actually governed by this equation which is given by here. So this equation, if you see, for the positive value of the points, this yj will be equal to 1. So in that case, you will get this as the hyperplane equation. And if your yj is -1, then you will get this as the equation. So this particular hyperplane will have this equation. And this particular hyperplane, that is, you can say it's a margin, actually margin for this hyperplane. So this hyperplane will have, this margin will have this equation which is given over here. And now, as I told you earlier, that if you see here, lambda j is greater than 0 only only for the points which are lying on the boundary, this boundary. So this boundary, if you see, if you put yj as 1, then theta transpose xj plus theta 0 will be equal to 1. And if you put yj as -1, then you will have theta xj plus theta 0 equal to -1. So what it says is that for all the points which are lying on this boundary, so these are the points which are lying on the boundary, will have lambda greater than equal to 0. Only these points will have lambda greater than or equal to 0. For all the other points which you have here, which are not lying on this particular boundary or this margin, will have lambda equal to 0. For all these points will have lambda equal to 0. So that is what is shown over here. And also note that this particular condition which we are discussing always, the one which we have here, this particular condition which we are always discussing, it ensures that there is no data point in the margin. If you see here, within the margin there is no data point. So that ensureness is coming because you are constraining this value greater than or equal to 1. So that ensures that is coming from the objective function, convex optimization function constraint, which ensures that, so that there will be no points here. Inside there will be no data points when you are discussing linear SVM or hard SVM. If you are discussing hard SVM, there will be no points in the middle of this particular thing. And the last point that I want to discuss is that all these points which are lying on this boundary are called as the support vectors. These are the vectors which actually define the hyperplane, this one. So this support vectors are actually responsible. These are the points which are responsible for defining this boundary. So that's why the name comes support vectors. So going to the dual space only allowed you to see this particular thing. But if you were in the primal space, as we discussed last time, where we had, min max problem, there you were not able to visualize this. But when you move to the dual space, then only you understood that support vectors are actually these vectors which are on the hyperplane boundary. So I will stop here because today a lot of things are covered. So I want you to, go back and sit and see this lecture again and again and understand the concept, so that once you have the full grasp of it, we will move forward. So if you have any questions, let me know. Any one of you having any questions? Okay, so if you do not have any questions, so let me stop the